The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome to the Lemonade Car Show. I'm your host, Lorraine Sommerfeld. We're brought to you by OMVIC, Crown Sound Insurance, and Hotspot Auto Parts. I'm joined today by John Raymond. He's a consultant with the APA, and our mechanic, as always, is Chris Muir. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We have an opening segment where we get to kind of pick any topic I want.
We want, yeah.
Which I like. There's a lot. If you don't read the headlines, I don't know how you can avoid the headlines anymore, but you really have to. There's a lot going on politically, and it really has a big impact on the auto market. Most jobs, some people don't realize how many jobs are tied into the automobile industry.
Well, in Ontario, it's 1 in 6 or 1 in 7.
Because of the offshoot industries, parts, restaurants that people go to, everything.
Logistics, not only manufacturing, and of course dealerships that we all go to.
Yeah.
They've built massive facilities, invested in a growing market, and now there's a big question mark and indecision. What's going to happen? And in Canada, as we know, when people feel nervous, the wheels of shopping and other things
screech to a halt.
Screech to a halt.
Yeah, there's a lot of rattling going on south of the border, and it matters up here north of the border. And the whole concept of tariffs on the vehicles, I wrote a column about it recently, and somebody wrote to me and said, well, what's the big deal? Because we can still make cars here, because I talked about how much cars would increase. The CRV would go up $9,000 US dollars.
30% across the board.
It's crazy. Yeah. Because we export them. And they said, well, ours here would still be cheap. I said, no, we export 90% of them, and we can't just start making 10% and sell them for that amount. And so the top 30 selling vehicles would be across North America would just be tanking.
Yeah,
and
certainly.
It's a big issue. So
you're looking at Canadian market share. I mean, our population is so much less than that of our neighbors to the south. We don't have enough market share or enough potential customers in order to support our own auto industry that doesn't support exports. It just can't happen. And again, going back to that number of jobs that are linked to new car sales, look at what happened in Oshawa or Windsor in 2009 after the big three had their little tiff. I mean, those small markets collapsed. Houses went up for next to no money. People just left. It was devastating and on a small scale, something that bounced back.
But the truth is that for many years before NAFTA, we enjoyed the auto pack, which kept industry on both sides of the border, Canada and the US, moving. So whether you lived in Hamilton and you were producing steel or auto parts in southern Ontario or cars, this was a relationship that worked for many years. And I think Canadians are quite concerned about this. Obviously, they want to continue to be employed. We want to enjoy cars at a rate that we could afford.
I was talking to Jerry Diaz, he's the Unifor spokesman. And a lot of people get on about unions, but this is the time more than ever when we need the support from the unions. And something a lot of people don't realize, in the US, the Steelworkers Union is actually made up of mostly forestry workers with timber, and the timber stuff is really important here and there as well. So it's all tied together, it's not just the cars. But there's 1.5 million dealers in the US. If tariffs go up on 10% that they import from Canada, which of their total sales, and 40% of their sales come from Mexico, 30%. 40% of those 1.5 jobs just at the dealer level will evaporate.
Well, they will have their issues south of the border as well.
Well, Jerry said to me, he goes, he's rattling. I don't think he's going to do it, the president. It's scary.
And we've been fielding phone calls at the APA. Should I buy a car now because I'm worried about the tariffs?
Yeah. That uncertainty will also leak through to the manufacturers, because there's no way they're going to invest in R&D here in North America if it's this unsettled and unstable. That will, every single industry, again, that's tied to it. You think of all the engineering, all the computer industries, all the software stuff. If that all screeches to a halt when these huge manufacturers say it's too precarious, we don't want to do it. So that rattling is really going to make problems in lots of other sectors.
And the problem is if the tariffs don't go through and it's business as usual, it leaves a taste in your mouth. So industry may slow down the progress of building new plants and investing in their people.
Do you think we're going to see, sales have been record on record on record, like year over year in Canada. I think we're going to see it go, hoo-hoo.
So this year we, according to DeRosier, and don't quote me to the last car, but we were going to see a 2 million unit year.
Yeah, just over.
But in truth, we've had a number of months where the sales haven't been as strong as last year's.
So that threat.
DeRosier, I think, still believes that we'll be in the 2 million
Yeah.
market. If you ask
And none
the
of them are
dealers,
sedans.
you ask the dealers, they say it definitely has slowed down.
I think that's what we're going to see.
Sure, nobody's going to invest when there's in uncertainty in a market, particularly at a consumer level, right? You're not going to expand your fleet if you don't know if that fleet is going to be there, how much you're going to be billed at the very end of it. Right now, we're in such uncertainty. If I order a custom truck out of the States, how much is it when it gets here?
If there's going to be slapped an $8,000.
Certainly.
Well,
tariff
we've
on
actually
it.
seen
Yeah.
a little bit of it in a completely different area, and that's the EV rebates.
Yeah.
So when Ontario dropped the EV rebates, all of a sudden the people that had cars that weren't built yet, they were losing their rebates.
And that, again, reverberates through all the other industries. Yeah, I think we have to pay attention to this. It's ongoing and
Certainly.
changing every day. And you know what? We'll be back after this break so we can talk some more about this. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show. I'm your host, Lorraine Sommerfeld. We're joined now by Chris Wood. He's my body shop expert, and Chris Muir, our mechanic, as always. Chris, it's on this show we do mechanical stuff all the time because that is probably one of the most popular topics that we have. But bodywork is becoming increasingly more intricate, and you know a lot about it. Let's talk first about the technology, how it's changing, because the composites that cars are made of, it's not like old school when you
for
could
sure.
do things. So maybe tell us a little bit about how it's changing.
You know, the auto manufacturers are building cars a lot different than they used to. A lot of different steels, alloys are going into the structure of the vehicle. You know, you need to be constantly updated on what you can do with that material, if you can fix it, if you have to replace it. So, you know, it's quite sophisticated these days, repairing a vehicle, making sure it's back to that 5-star safety rating instead of having it put down to a 3 because the repair technician couldn't fix it properly, or the shop doesn't have the material or the tooling.
I think a lot of people overlook that safety part. I look at a fender and go, well, can't I go to a wrecker and just get another fender and stick it on? Is that sometimes doable, or is that like a dumb thing? Because a repair can cost so much. Can you just replace a thing?
Yeah, I mean, you're just gonna have to make a judgment call on versus you know, replace versus repair. Sometimes the value of that part may not be, you know, very, very expensive, so it's better to change it. But it's always, you know, when you're talking about a wrecker, those parts have to be, you know, inspected quite seriously, because I'm just going to explain one thing now with the cars and the technology with a plastic bumper cover. Simple little bumper cover has sensors in behind it. Let's just say a shop puts a material on that plastic, and that sensor now is compromised. So if you have a lane departure warning and that sensor is located in the back of the bumper, a material goes on there, it kind of compromises the safety of that actual you know, that departure warning, and that becomes a safety issue because people rely on that now. They're getting, obviously, technology that makes people lazy to make sure there's somebody in their rear view mirror or something, and that doesn't go off because the repair shop didn't fix the bumper properly. I mean, that's a red flag, and those are things that people need to be aware of.
I had a cop in Alberta tell me that somebody drove into him, like took the lane, and he pulled them over and said, "You hit me." And they go, "Oh no, my lane departure didn't go off, so you couldn't have gone there." Yeah, true story. Well, well, we're all used to, if we hear funny noises out of our car, we know to get Chris to fix it. But you know, we look at material stuff and go, you know. But
The way to take it in a nutshell, you know, do your due diligence on finding out if your vehicle, let's say it's any brand, if they're certified and if they're specialized in that type of vehicle, because, you know, that manufacturer has put a lot of guidelines and implemented tooling for that facility to fix the cars properly. And if you don't have that, I mean, I'm not saying something could happen, but if something does happen, you know, you could be at risk with safety-wise, or you could be liable.
Okay, you work for an independent,
I do.
and my favorite mechanics are independents as well, and I also use dealers for some cars, it just depends. Are independents capable of doing?
Independent body shops are. We get asked all the time if we do body work, and I mean, something as simple as a paint job is very meticulous and very complex. When you get into modern structures, it's one thing if I'm working on something out of the 60s or 70s. It's completely different to work on something modern. I don't mind patching a panel on something really old. On a new car, what material am I working on? Is it a strengthened steel? Is it a structural steel? All of these questions, you have to be specialized to answer them.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is why we're two very distinct sides of the same industry, is body and mechanical. They are two different skills.
Yeah.
It's like asking someone to do a roof that only works on foundations of a home, right?
Exactly.
They're the same piece, but they're two very different pieces of that one item.
We go down to Dearborn, like from my end of the industry, we go and they show us the lightweighting stuff and everything that's going on, and they cut stuff in half, and it's really fascinating and it's very cool. You must have to be kept up to date constantly.
100%. So, you know, the brands that we specialize in, like daily bulletins, we inspect, we check our email boxes. There's consistently training happening. There's an expiry on our training. People come and audit our facility to make sure the tooling is up to date, making sure that it's working properly, it's being used. There's also people going through our books, making sure that we have our repair procedures in with that file for a certain vehicle. I mean, it's great. It's a lot of work. I don't think we get recognized the type of things that we have to do because we're just going so fast in a new modern way. But it's constantly changing, and we have to be updated periodically.
And I think a lot of this, we're going to address this in the next segment, but the insurance companies come into play with a lot of this because most of us end up in body shops because of collisions.
Yeah.
And that's the starting point for many of us, and it can be, you're not in there that often. Unless you're a really terrible driver, you're not in there that often. Okay, or, sorry, unless you're surrounded by a lot of really terrible drivers. Is that more correct?
It's an unfortunate incident. You don't plan to leave your house and get into a collision. Yeah. So, I mean, it's like you're on the fly, you're distraught. So.
Okay. We'll be back after this break with more Lemonade Car Show. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show. I'm talking with Chris Wood. He's my body expert. Boy, that sounds weird. And Chris Muir, my head technician. We stopped off in the last segment. We were talking about insurance because that's usually where most people come into contact with a body shop for the first time. Are people allowed to choose where they take a car?
100%. It's if it's their vehicle, it's totally up to them where they want to have their vehicle repaired. But saying that, you know, most cases the insurance will direct you to a facility, which is, you know, it may not be a bad thing, but you still have to understand that insurance is just going to direct you to that facility. Whether they know they're certified or specialized in the brand of vehicle you drive, that's going to be on you.
So what kind of questions do you ask? What do you look for? What do you ask for if you go in?
Well, if you're adamant having your car repaired properly and making sure that it's safe and it's done properly, you'd have to ask the insurance company if they're directing you, is that facility specializing in my brand of vehicle? Are they certified by that brand of vehicle? Those are key things for a person that's not involved in accidents all the time to understand that those technicians in that shop are highly trained on your specific vehicle. So you'll know you're getting a good repair, and when you're ready to sell or trade in your vehicle or just keep it forever, you know that your vehicle's done properly and you won't be out any money in your pocket.
I do know some insurance companies, they've had a preferred list for so long, they've never revisited it. They've never, it's been out of date. I'll say it, you don't have to, because I know it from insurance people.
Right.
So they've got it on there, it just keeps cranking over, so they don't,
Right.
it could have fallen off. And I also know, I was at a very high-end shop doing a bodywork thing a few years ago, which was really cool. did the body, oh my God, it was exhausting. I see why it costs so much to just buff out a little like scratch. It
Yeah.
took hours, like it was crazy. But the price they would charge, what I got told is sometimes the insurance company and the body shop, they'll come to terms in the middle.
Yeah.
Because the quote you'll get just coming in cold will be one, you'll say, well, how come? And they go, we split the difference if it gets down to it, because it's,
You know,
argue on it.
when I have an insurance appraiser come out and inspect a vehicle, he's in my shop. We're looking at a lot of technology vehicles, and they'll question a lot of stuff. And my job is to have that piece of paper from the manufacturer telling us why we need to do this and why, and they can't question that. It's right there, black and white. I need this bumper to be changed, not repaired, for this reason. If I don't have that documentation, I don't blame the insurance company for not paying us to fix that the certain way, because I'm giving it to them and letting them know. And if you don't have that, you may have an issue. But
Is that the same from a mechanical standpoint? You must have the same standards that you have to hit
We
on a repair?
we have differing standards. I mean, when we're getting into repair jobs, things that are sent over from a body shop, a lot of the time we have to fight for higher than minimalist parts or OE parts for repairs, and we have to have the documentation or examples of parts failing prematurely, or they don't fit properly, they don't work properly. You'll have to readjust this, we'll have to readjust that.
So consumers need to have you guys on their side. They have to ask questions
Yeah.
and make sure that they're being represented
Right.
by people in your positions.
exactly.
When the work's done, what do I look for when I go in? Your car's ready, come pick it up.
Yeah, you most likely will have to be presented a repair bill, which is an invoice telling what kind of work has been done. I like to say the body shop business, you have to be careful. It is a tough business. So when you look at that invoice and you say, I have a new bumper cover, you have to make sure that they put a new bumper cover on there and they just didn't fix it. Or, if you're looking at certain things on your vehicle, I don't expect a normal consumer to understand what's been done, because maybe on the outside it looks good, but you can never see what's gone inside to it.
So
Right.
that has to be itemized
It does
on
have to
an
be
invoice.
itemized.
Okay, so look for those.
Yeah.
Well, would this not be on a work order then before it gets done?
Yeah, it is on a work order.
Okay, so they should match?
Yes, exactly, exactly. Saying this, it's like you can put a lot of makeup on that ugly pig. Okay, I've
We
said
got
this
a pig.
before. So the car looks good outside, but
Yeah.
let's say it gets in an accident and it doesn't perform the way it's supposed to perform because it didn't follow procedures. I don't expect the customer to know that. That's why the consumer has to do their due diligence in the beginning, making
pick a
sure that
shop.
they go to the proper shop that specializes and it has their back and is honest and it takes care of the customer, make you feel like you're in good hands, because you can never go to sleep thinking your car is not done properly, but it looks good outside. You have to be reassured,
'Cause
and that's where where having me or somebody having a customer word to mouth is always good. But I like to go through the car with the customer, making sure that they're aware of what we've done and giving them that reassurance that they're safe and that they will not lose money on their vehicle when they're trading it in, depending on their insurance policy or their lease term.
Oh, they're beat if it's been in a crash.
Right, but for us to do, we try to minimize that residual value being decreased.
Yeah.
We try to make sure that they're safe. We did everything in our possible, hands that we can make sure that they're good.
And we will address that on a future show, that residual drop-off. It's probably one of the most popular questions
it's a
and
tough
a
one.
popular problem.
Yeah.
So both of you then, we've got cosmetic over actual. Don't be fooled by what you're seeing.
Of course.
Make sure you're seeing something
Right.
that's been done. Same with you. You talked about original equipment parts,
Yeah.
things like that. Make sure they're up to
Make
safety
sure that they're
standards.
up to standard. Make sure that it's not a white box that hasn't been certified for that vehicle
So this is about safety first and foremost.
completely.
And it gets more complicated as we go along,
Yeah.
and more computer components, and when the
Yeah.
airbags go off and it becomes a disposable car, depending on the price of it. Yeah, there's a lot of sticker shock going on for consumers.
Hold
So
on.
we'll be back after this break with more lemonade. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show, brought to you by Omvik Crown Sound Insurance and Hotspot Auto Parts. I'm joined by Chris Wood and Chris Muir, and we're going to take some calls from viewers right now. Let's go to our first call.
Hi, my name is Harold from Toronto. I have a 2018 SQ5, and I want to paint the calipers red, and I want to know if there's any issues into doing that. Thanks.
Interested?
Yeah, brand new high-end vehicle. Came from the factory. I don't personally recommend it. I just, I don't think it's a good idea.
They know what they're doing?
Um,
Okay, here goes Chris.
In the aftermarket, we can paint them for you. We have to take the brakes apart, mask everything properly, rebleed the brakes. If you do it properly, it is a long, drawn-out procedure, and there is no benefit from it. As well as a lot of us in the aftermarket look at painted calipers probably not in the best light. If you don't mask them properly, you risk binding them up with the paint that you've put on them. So, while you can do it, I wouldn't recommend it.
Would that impact resale value?
It could impact warranty.
Yeah.
It
so-
could impact
so more
resale
important.
value. Just, I don't know. I don't think it's a good idea, but it's your car. You can do it, like Chris says, but I'd steer away from it on that type of vehicle.
So Harold, you can if you want to. This crew says not to. Let's go to another question.
I want to know if the module that they put on the battery for new cars, if that actually prevents rust, because I'm buying a 2018 Mazda CX-S, and I just want to know, is it worthwhile, because they charge $1,795 for it.
Okay, we all know where I stand on those modules. The science, there is none behind it. And $1,795, that's hands down the highest I've heard on
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
That's usually it's $600,
The high
$800.
pricer, you win.
Yeah, stay away from them. And I know people disagree with me. If you want to put them on your car, go ahead, but it's not preventing anything. Guys, have at it.
I myself have sent you photographs upon photographs of rotted out cars with these boxes still glowing away and their apparent circuits still in good working order. They don't work.
Well, the technology is based on submarines and bridges
Yeah,
where they're
ships
underwater.
and bridges.
So
And they
unless
have
you
to be in a saline solution in order to work properly.
So unless you're driving really poorly and you're in the ocean all the time, they're not going to work.
Yeah, I don't like the product.
Do you see them?
Yeah, and I see there's no change in if the car's gonna be corroding. It has been, and it has a module on it. I don't see very many anymore, thank goodness. But obviously I steer clear of those. I don't like any certain electronics that are gonna correct the body from reversing corrosion.
I think the other thing is people say, well, I've got one and there's no rust on it. And I had a note like this that said, I've got a car, there's no rust on it. Surface rust, you don't see a lot on most cars anymore. Get it up on a hoist, though, that's where you see the rust starting. Even on a new car, it starts immediately.
Your
the
subframes,
corrosion
your
starts.
welds in your subframes, you're gonna start seeing some certain things. That electronic device, 100% is not gonna prevent that. I'm sorry.
This is the other reason when you go to buy a car, to take it to a mechanic, to get it up on a hoist so they can take a look at it. What you see from the outside is, it's not hiding things, but we've got the exterior to the point where they're not corroding as much. Mazda 3s, I swear, every time I see one, I'm...
We can still lipstick a pig real good, to steal someone else's statement. Even if the top looks good, it's freshly painted, look underneath the car.
Yeah.
I've had so many sad stories.
Okay, we have time for one more call.
Hi, my name is George. I have a really old Toyota Sienna. I think it was made in 1999. Over the years, there have been a number of scratches on it, and more recently there was more of a gouge in just small accidents, mostly in garages and such. So all these things have accumulated. I was wondering if you have a place where it would be they could do the auto body repairs, and then wouldn't be that costly. I'm not looking for the highest quality. I mean, the thing is almost poor thing is almost 20 years old.
Oh, let it go, George. Sorry, I didn't mean to be mean, but 20-year-old car.
If you you want to get it done, you don't want to spend a lot of money, I would source out, you know, a few shops.
No, even that. I mean, there's so many. Doesn't include prep. So you're in there, you're filling the holes, you're applying the primer yourself, you're masking off the car. You roll it off a trailer, ready to go for that price.
Yeah, I think you
It's misleading.
should, you know, do some research on, pick 5 shops, go to each one of them.
Would you repaint that car?
I wouldn't be surprised if a paint job for that car at the low end was $2,000 or $3,000.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I think that's your answer when it gets into that kind
Yeah.
of price. So
If you
you
can
know
live
what?
with it,
Enjoy it.
yeah.
It's lived. It's just wearing its wrinkles like some of us do. That's all the time we have for Lemonade Car Show. I'm your host, Lorraine Sommerfeld. Thank you, Chris Wood and Chris Muir, our mechanics. Thanks to our sponsors, Alvic Crown, Sound Insurance, Hotspot Auto Parts, and thanks for watching.